Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Well, yesterday during our session, nothing too interesting, but after we left, got kind of interesting. Let's see what happened, huh? Okay, so here's the treasuries. You can see we had a little bit of a pop late into the session on Tuesday. And now here during the overnight session, it is reverting a little bit here in the treasuries. Let's check the ES. Okay, interesting. So the drop, I believe, was due to some of Powell's comments. And I guess we can get into that later, but Powell had a speech and the market didn't like what he said. So the stock market sold off pretty dramatically. And it was kind of funny, like the treasuries didn't react to that. Because based on his comments, I would think that the treasuries would sell. But instead, they bought on the equity correlation. So that the treasuries are now mean reverting and the S&P 500 isn't really is very, very interesting. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, so oil, it looks like it's on doing a 2-day winning streak. Because yesterday, oil was a pretty big jump, right? In fact, I bet if we come over here, we look at our market analyzer. Oh, actually, copper is the biggest winner today, but oil is number 2. Oh, that's interesting. We'll get to copper in a second. Gold's holding its gains, silver holding its gains, and we got copper. Oh, yeah, wow. Copper, really? What's going on in copper? Okay, well, I did not see anything in my readings about copper, so I have to go and look at that. Japanese yen. Okay, yes, very interesting. The Japanese yen is selling off and the dollar is strengthening, so that's probably why the treasuries are moving and not the equity correlation. And that could be, well, but it's like further dollar strength. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that what's going on here, let's check Bitcoin. Yeah, Bitcoin still down there. I think what's happening is based on Powell's speech, traders are adding to bets that the Federal Reserve continues to keep rates about where they are, and that the basis trade between the U.S. and other countries continues to stay in there, and so they're bringing money into the dollar, and that also means the treasuries pulling back a little bit because the rates are not going to be as easy. Could be a net negative for equities, but equities aren't moving yet at the moment because they're not putting their money into equities. They're bringing it over here. And well, actually, I don't know if that really makes sense. I don't think that I can completely. So I think the idea that they're bringing money into the dollar because of a basis trade, I think that fits. But the money flows don't necessarily make sense, because if they're putting it into the dollar, and then where are they putting it? They have to be putting it into equities or treasuries probably. And if neither of them are really moving, then what does that mean? So don't think we can completely explain it, but I do think that gives us a more interesting market today. We do have on the news, we got a 5-year note auction. We've got some housing data. Which one is where I lost my spot here? Oh yeah, new home sales at 10 o'clock. But the opening range here in the treasuries is really tight. So I don't know if we're actually going to get a move or not. I don't know. Oh, there was an iceberg at 25 though. That kind of... So tight range suggests that we're not going to have a very good session, but some of the icebergs that we are seeing and so forth, some of the flows suggests that we could have a good session. And there was some decent movement in the overnight session as well. So I'm not going to give up on it yet, but I think we should try and stay a little bit focused. AO says, good morning. ES was beautiful yesterday. Well, I don't know if that is my idea of beautiful, but it was something else, wasn't it? Well, so what was his comments? I think the comment that really kind of screwed the stock market was him saying that stocks looked highly valued. So was that the terminology that he used? Which, I mean, I think is right. But we still have this issue. Like, okay, the stock market is not the larger economy, right? And there are parts of the economy that are really hurting. There are parts of the economy, like man, if you're AI anything, you're living it up right now, right? I had a friend at work, and he has a friend that works for Oracle and had Oracle options. So like, that guy's probably a millionaire at this moment. On paper, his paper millionaire at least. I guess it would depend on when the options expire and all of these sorts of things, but they're making bank. They're making bank over there. Rest of the tech industry, really, really hurting. Really, really. I'm sitting here like, ah, man. After I was done working for the bank, I should have tried to go to Microsoft. Microsoft would probably be the place that I would have had the most chance of getting into. Should have done that. And then maybe moved my way into... If I had really known and had the plan, I would have definitely done things different. Uzi, I just had a weird... Okay, go on. Let's see here. Samuela, that's a new name. Welcome to the stream. 20K job report was woeful. Economy is screwed. Lower rates is going to lead to a blow off top. Thank you. I think you have a totally legitimate argument there. That, you know, when the economy is going into a recession, this is what it looks like. And at first, equities will tend to move up and then overextend, and then that kind of is part of what starts the decline that you can't stop, you know? I've been getting clips of the Tetris movie, and I just watched the ending scene and realized Robert Maxwell was a character in it. Oh. And that was just... Oh, really? I did not know that. Oh, dude, I'm gonna have to go watch that because I had that on my list, and I was trying to find where to watch it, and I couldn't find... Wait, you're just getting clips, so you weren't able to watch the whole movie. Yeah, because I was getting clips of it on TikTok, and then I don't know why I stopped getting them. Because the last time that happened to me was the movie about BlackBerry. Was it? Yeah. Research in Motion is the name of the company, right? I was getting clips about that, and so I went and found it and watched it, and I loved that movie. Like, I think... Probably if I go and I look at the movie ratings and stuff, probably rated mediocre. It was probably underperformed at the box office, but because of the subject matter and all of that, I really enjoyed it. And I think it showed a lot of things about business that people don't realize. Like the people that are really making bank, that become like billionaires, a large part of it is that they took extreme risks. I kind of realize looking back that like I went on a certain path, you know, and because I didn't completely understand not only my own interests but where to position myself to take advantage of my own interests, you know, because when there's a couple of turning points, right? One was when I worked for the bank, I could have said, well, let's move to New York. I always said, I don't want to move to New York. At the time, it probably would have been the better choice because me and my ex were never able to have children anyways. and so the whole reason we were staying in Utah for kids didn't happen. So it would have made a lot more sense to go to New York, right? And then if I was in New York, maybe I could have stayed in the trading space, or I could have at that point then started working to try and become a quant. It's kind of crazy now, like becoming a quant is a thing that like I see kids in high school like start aspiring to do, and like you have to start early, and you're doing all, you know, like you're crunching just like they do with LEET code in computer programming. There's like LEET code plus statistical problems, right? So there's the next part is that I could have aspired to moving over to that, and had I known where I needed to go to do that, could have started working like that, right? Then the next thing was I could have tried to go to tech adjacent instead of just going into local companies in Utah after that. But the other choice that I could have had that I think I probably should have done at the time was do startups. I could have like instead of working at the bank for 6 years, I could have worked at the bank for 2 years and then tried to go into startups. Because I feel that I should have taken more risk when I was younger. You know? I guess at the same time, if I had gone down that path and the chances are your startup doesn't work out, right? Maybe I wouldn't get paid as well as I do now. But I've kind of been hammered by this tech recession that we're having anyways, right? So maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Which would mean that I totally still should have gone for it. Rocks Neutrino 5, welcome back. Let's see here. So going back, Samula, I'm prepared for it, so I hope it happens. Yeah. So in my portfolio, I have been outperforming the S&P 500 by a little bit. Even though I don't feel like I am very like super well diversified, because most of it is my ownings in banks. But you know, but because I've been performing like that, and I wasn't even deploying all my capital, and so I decided that it made sense to buy treasuries. And I also had silver. I kept the silver, even though the silver was down from when I bought it, but the silver's doing really great now, right? So I have some TLT, and the whole thing is because I will see on the subreddit all the time, like, oh, should we buy TLT? Because I think right now, like, if you think that interest rates are high and that in the end interest rates are going to come down and whatnot, well, then being in bonds does make sense. but not necessarily the long end of the curve. Because what we're seeing happen right now is the long end of the curve is kind of lagging. The long end of the curve kind of thinks that inflation is going to continue to be a problem for the near term. And so I wouldn't say that that makes TLT a bad play, because you still get like a dividend from it and things like that. And for me, it's probably okay because, you know, the rest of the portfolio is works really well anyways, and that was just was just sitting there. If inflation really spikes, if we had like a, what would you call a another inflation spike, then TLT would get hammered, right? So that's the risk. But in order to really get like the big payoff on TLT that I see a lot of people come into the subreddits and things like that looking for, we're going to have a recession, basically, right? So that's where, you know, I'm kind of positioned like, I don't think that it's going to happen, but I had the ability to kind of hedge myself against it. So why not? So that's what I did. And it's been doing okay. I got a good price on it, so I'm up a little bit. Inflation, or the federal government is borrowing to me. Yeah, that's another problem on the longer end of the curve. Yeah. But you know, this is again comes back to what we were talking about yesterday, which is that right now the professional investors, particularly in the bond market, seem to be much more concerned about the government spending and the possible inflation problems than they are about any kind of like short-term job market problems. And meanwhile, I'm seeing things in the job market that I don't think just go away. I don't know how it turns out. I think it's too complicated for me to be able to sort out what the actual end impact is. But I think that there will be an impact from all of this. And it's probably not a good thing, right? Is it a big enough problem that it results in a recession? Hope not. But it's certainly something that if we don't get a recession, it's going to be with us for a long time. I was thinking about Portal yesterday, because what we're seeing in the economy is basically companies are being, so some companies, let's say, some companies are being squeezed by the tariffs. And so they're not hiring people because of the tariffs. So that's one source of jobs, even for computer jobs that you would get. Right? Like the company I work for right now, they're being hit by tariffs. Then you've got other people that were kind of more of a pure tech play, for instance. They're going to be hurting just because the interest rates are high. Right? And then all of the money, like all of the capex is going into AI. We're spending all of this money building out our artificial intelligence, and there's still this big question about whether artificial intelligence from large language models actually has the benefits that everybody's expecting. And that's where I think that Portal is a really interesting political commentary on this. They saw it coming literally decades before it happened. Because what is Portal? Portal is basically this guy that kind of got lucky selling shower heads to the government, somehow got all of this crazy funding to just have his scientists do quote unquote science, and somehow they ended up inventing artificial intelligence despite the CEO being a complete moron. And so then he automated his workforce and gave it all to AI, except for that the AIs are morons because he's a moron, right? And so the whole game is these AIs being complete morons after we had already automated the workforce there, right? Isn't that what we're doing? Is we're like charging headfirst into this automation despite really understanding it because the CEO sees dollar signs. I really wonder whether it will be a pure commodity, whether what will be a pure, like, compute AI. I do kind of think that there is probably a future. Well, I mean, we're already kind of starting to go in that direction where you can kind of look at compute in dollar terms, right? And it will more and more get to where you look at different tasks in terms of compute. Yeah. For a second, I forgot you were trying to talk about Portal and was trying to figure out what company you were talking about, right? Because there's so many companies that are literally doing things like that, right? Because the whole lore in Portal is like, he got rich, right? So then he went and hired the greatest scientists and had them do whatever kind of science. And then for some reason, whenever they invented something big, like they invented Portal technology, they didn't do anything with it because they're idiots. They're idiots. And the whole business was just being run by government funding, I think. Because I remember playing through it at the time and people talking about in Portal 2, like, that they didn't really like the political corporate commentary sort of a thing. Because at the time it just felt like, oh, it's just left-wing people complaining about corporations, right? But I think that it ended up being a really prescient take on the kind of incentives that corporations and executives have and where they lead us awry. Because remember that the bigger points, the thing that I want people to understand is that markets are complex, and complexity means that there can be high-level behaviors that are very difficult for us to predict, and that can lead to incentives and behaviors that are very much not what we want. And that's what we see in financial markets. And so, while we want to believe that financial markets are inherently efficient in some form, or as some people think that they're literally perfect, like libertarian, that I would describe from the perspective of market efficiency, libertarians believe that free markets are perfect, and ergo everything should be moved to a completely free deregulated market, which is complete nonsense. It contradicts every piece of empirical evidence that we have, because the empirical evidence that we have is that financial markets do a good job, like, in order to share information between competing agents. How do you do that? Because what would happen in communism is, like, if there was a shortage, like if they weren't going to make enough wheat that season or something, well, anybody that knew that, the incentive for them was to just go out and buy up all of the wheat and keep it to themselves, not let anybody else know, because anybody else knowing could give them an advantage, and you wouldn't want them to know that, because that would reduce the stocks of wheat. You want to be able to hoard it all, right? So you get this Nash equilibrium, which is don't share the information. So the market is the thing that gives the incentive to share the information. Well, if I know that the wheat harvest can be bad, I can buy wheat futures. And that will then transfer that information to the market, but I still get paid, I still benefit from it, right? That's why you have to have financial markets. So it does a good job of that. But that doesn't mean that it's perfect. That doesn't mean that the price is always perfectly reflective of all of the information out there. That's just not the way that it works, right? Like, you come in and you buy, like, that's going to be reflected in the price, but it is always the case, pretty much, that it goes too far or not far enough. So the actual valuation is kind of suspect, and it's just like, it does a good enough job that it's resulted in insane amounts of productivity and growth in our society. That doesn't mean that every little decision is correct. If you go in and you say, I'm just going to do what I think that the market likes, and you do that, you're going to make a lot of bad decisions. And that's the thing that I want people to understand. Is that, yeah, the way that our system works actually kind of causes people to make bad decisions. And one, you can kind of take advantage of that sometimes as a trader. And two, we need to work towards creating a society where we make better decisions if we're going to move to the next stage. I really think that the next stage of prosperity is going to come from more efficiency, but making those decisions better. And you might say, well, the next stage of prosperity is artificial intelligence. Well, no, because if you have artificial intelligence, it's just like in Portal, right? If you have artificial intelligence, but the executives are making brain dead decisions, doesn't actually result in prosperity, does it? It just results in an even more dysfunctional system, because the artificial intelligence just kind of like amplifies all of the problems. So what I'm getting at? I have never read why onion futures are illegal. Let's read about that. Why are onion futures illegal? Onion futures are illegal in the US due to the Onion Futures Act of 1958, which was passed in response to market manipulation by traders Vince Kosuga and Sam Siegel. Kosuga cornered the onion market, controlling most of the futures contracts and available onions, and then flooded the market with onions to drive the price to near zero, devastating other traders and farmers. This act of manipulation led Congress to ban all futures trading on onions to prevent such abuses and price volatility from happening again. Oh, that's interesting. So could you make an argument there that the onion market is too small and ergo too easy to manipulate? Because I'm sitting there like, well, okay, but if you do that with onions, then why aren't you doing that with corn, wheat, etc.? But then I'm like, oh, but those are way more. Those markets are probably 10 times the size of the onion market, right? Interesting. I've never heard of that before. That just, when it comes to my content, I feel so ADHD all the time, because every day I will kind of have a thought about, well, I could make content about this, or I could make content about this. But then I'm not sure, like, okay, but would making content like that actually help the channel? And then, even if it helps the channel, would it actually serve the larger goals that we're trying to go towards? Because the issue is that when I make videos about the actual goal, like when I talk about the specific inefficiencies and why this is and go deep into it, those videos usually don't do well. right? So what do I do about it, right? And one of the thoughts, because what is that guy, Patrick Boyle? That's what he did. See, he started out, he made a bunch of really, really good videos about how different quant strategies work. And they're like some of the least watched videos on his channel. And what did he move into doing is basically telling stories like this with the onion futures. And I think, well, okay, yeah, you could do that, but you're going to compete with Patrick Paul. Yeah, actually, I think I could do it. I think I could do a good job with it. Because his reading of it is kind of dry, and I think I could make it a little bit more interesting. But that would be a ton of effort, and I don't know if that would really make sense. And like, I do this every day. It's like, am I poo-pooing ideas that are actually really good ideas, and like all I needed to do is just do this one thing and then it would take off? But like, you never know, and I don't have time to try all of them, you know? Right now I don't have time to do any of them, so that's kind of where I'm at right now, to be honest with you. I get people that want to want to do product placements and that sort of a thing, which I love doing, because if it's a product that would actually benefit you guys as traders and it helps the YouTube channel, and I get gear with it, then yeah, absolutely, let's do it, right? But like, I'm kind of in the like, I don't know if I have time to make any videos right now, so like, leave me alone. Like, you know, I'm doing another video for that, so. I think I need to take that stuff and split it off into a different channel, though. I think so. Anyways, this is funny. I went into that whole long tangent because all off of Uzi talking about the Tetris movie. But I haven't seen the whole Tetris movie, so I don't know if I'd say what are the. But it's interesting that that Maxwell was involved. Create a video course and charge for it, and for that you don't need a huge number of views. Yeah, I did start some work. I mean, I've kind of always wanted to make a book. That I really feel like that the educational content that I can provide works best in a book format. So I kind of started working on that, and we had a thought like, oh, well, we could do it as like a webinar. If like people sign up for a webinar, then that'd be great. But you know, I didn't really. The issue is, okay, so if I'm going to promote something like that, right, the people that I have, you know, like my core audience is you guys, right? And you guys are sitting here listening to me every day, while you would find the book useful, and you would probably buy a book. I don't know if you would buy a several $100 webinar series, right? And so that's why, you know, we kind of started working on it. There wasn't a whole lot of interest, and then I got a new day job and didn't have time for any of those sorts of things. That's why I think that the product that I could make, that I would be likely to get the most buy-in from those of you that are regularly watching the stream or are subscribed to the YouTube channel, would be our own futures trading platform. Especially if in the beginning you were able to get in on the platform for really cheap, right? Because getting people to switch platforms is kind of hard, right? There's probably a lot more money to be made from getting brand new traders into your platform than from converting old traders from other platforms. Although I do kind of get the feeling that Ninja Trader is going in that direction where like some people will leave the platform eventually. Ooh, that reminds me, I have this little, they're like redoing their ecosystem, and I need to redo the attestation, which makes me wonder if they're going to build a marketplace, which would be nice. Oh my gosh. So this just reminds me of something. I told myself I wasn't going to talk about this or bring this up, but it fits, so I'm going to bring it up, and maybe I'll be vague. No, I won't be vague. There was this thread on the futures trading subreddit, and they were basically saying, one of these guys, what is his name? Leo. Oh, it's actually still the top. It's still one of the top threads there. Yeah, Leo the Tiger. This guy was saying, oh, this guy is like a terrible trader. Every time that he tries to trade live, is absolutely terrible. And here's one day where he did a scalp 8 times in a row and got stopped out every time. Like when I read that, I was like, only 8? Because I think I can remember probably 2 or 3 streaks that were like 10 or more bad trades. And not even in like a 90-minute period, but like me over a course of several days and having completely different types of setup. Like this one, it sounds like, oh, it wasn't working and you tried it 8 times in a row. How dumb can you be, right? But I've definitely had situations where it's just like each setup is based off of a completely different set of things, and they all didn't work out, right? I haven't traded a whole lot live in the past year because of the day job situation, but you know, so I'm reading this like, oh, they're gonna come for me next. Actually, maybe that would probably help me if they come for me. Please do me next. Who's this guy? Giant Stuff. This guy is kind of interesting. I did go and like try to read through his history, and he just seemed very, very what is the word? Just anybody that's making money, he's like, they're full of shit, right? Which they are. But I'm wondering if it is that he thinks that trading overall is a scam, which, I mean, you're probably not going to make money from trading. And I'm just going to tell you straight up right now, like that's what you're here for. You think that you're going to become a millionaire from trading? Probably not going to happen. Okay. But maybe, you know, I was thinking maybe he has some idea of something that does work and he's poo-pooing everything else, but I couldn't sort that out. But anyways, and he was saying like, well, because my thing is like, there's nothing wrong with like streaming your trading, right? Just don't make unfounded claims. Like, don't come in and say you're this massively successful, profitable trader if you're not. Be transparent as you can about what you're actually doing and what your performance is. Ooh, by the way, that reminds me. So one of the things that I also was thinking about was we have this algo over here, and I know that there are issues with the algo, and it's kind of more of an experiment in like gathering data. And I'm worried that by putting it up there that people will be like, try and follow the robot. Please don't try and follow the robot. You'll probably lose money. Okay. It's not, we know that it's not a profitable algorithm. We're collecting data so that we can try and apply machine learning to make it a profitable algorithm, but we need data. Anyways, but I think so I'm looking in here being like, well, but is he's saying that he's profitable or any of these sorts of things? I don't see that. But what I think bothers this guy is that Leo sells an indicator package, right? So this is something that I find kind of funny in the futures space. Like a major factor, like seriously, a major factor in the way that retail traders trade, particularly the way that retail traders trade futures, is the tools available to
Order
them.
submitted.
They don't want to use tools that will cost them money, which ironically is probably some of the only ways that they're going to find edge. Of course, probably most of the indicator packages in particular that you go out there and you would buy are not going to provide you an edge, right? But there are some things that I kind of think are necessary for like understanding the market, like having a good DOM and being able to understand the order flow. I don't think that gives you an edge in and of itself, but it's kind of like a prerequisite to understanding and to be able to find an edge. And, well, that means buying an order flow suite, and then they don't want to do that because that's money, right? That's money. Or like better example, a news squawk. Okay. Like if you want something that's going to like objectively help you with your trading, get a news squawk. Getting the lifetime subscription to Financial Juice is, I think, the best investment I ever made with this channel. Helps so much. And there is so much edge in just having the news and in your ear and being able to react to it first. But that costs money. So the retail traders, they don't want to do it, right? So retail traders, they just hate any kind of semblance of service that costs money, right? But then at the same time, the people that do pay for those sorts of things are willing to pay obscene amounts of money for it. And this guy, so I asked him, are you sure? I'm probably down at the bottom now because, it was just a question. He answered the question. There you go. I asked him. You see, I only have one upvote there. That's funny. At least I'm not negative. This one's probably negative. Yep, there we go. Yeah. Are you sure he's selling indicators? Because I couldn't find anything on his profile about it at all. But apparently he owns Order Flow Labs. And I went and looked, and for sure, this guy, they're selling this indicator package and Discord room for $250 a month. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? I just can't. I can't imagine spending $250 a month for a Discord room and or trading indicator. And like the thing that's crazy to me is when I go to their website, and you look at what it does. Okay, well, like here's tools. They just have like a really brief description of what the tools are, right? And a picture of them. They don't look very complicated to me, man. I'm gonna bet you that anything that they're doing that my indicators don't already do, you could give me a little rundown of what it does, give me a spec, and within a month we could have them in our indicator suite too. And then you could have it for a one-time fee of $200 instead of spending $250 a month. What? I wouldn't buy indicator package over 100. I tweak some free ones. So I was originally a 100, and then I increased it to 200 due to, I was getting enough people buying it, and I wanted to be able to put more into marketing. I guess now is kind of a, like, I was like, okay, let's do that, and then we'll get a couple of sales, and then we'll have a few $100s we can put into marketing. So now we do have a few $100s that we can put into marketing, but I haven't done anything with it yet. That's one, I say, oh, here's this thing that I should be doing on this, with the channel, and then, but will I actually make a difference? And then I just end up not. This is something where it's like, no, I am supposed to do that. I just don't have the time to do that yet. But that is on the plan, right? Is to market the indicator suite better, because how can these guys actually be making money with that? Like, I just can't imagine. There are really that many people that spend $250 a month But then when you come in and you look at like their homepage, they claim somewhere on here. I don't know where it was. Somewhere on here they claimed that they had well over 1,000 customers. Which is like, wow, they could probably be just completely living off of that. How is that possible? I don't get it. I don't get it. So it's like here is, I have a better product. I think I probably have a better YouTube. Where are they getting all the people from? Where are they getting all of the people from? Google Ads? What's Twitter? I don't get it. Don't get it. So that's why I commented in here. Oh, look, in here I am offering $200 like a chump. I got downvoted for that. Perhaps there's an edge in their package? Maybe. But like that's the thing. So first of all, I'd never heard of it. Have any of you guys heard of it or used it or have a friend that uses it? You ask around for me, okay? You find somebody that has that package. Let me know what's in it. Because I guarantee you, I can build it, I can make it better, and I can give it cheaper. I guarantee it. Oh, Amir says that you used it before? Another thing though is there's a lot of things in here that's kind of like okay, like I don't know, here's liquidity zones, a tool dedicated to spotting areas of significant absorption. Like, I know how to program that, sure. It would be difficult to motivate me to program that because can't you just see that on your own? I don't, why do you need an indicator to draw that for you? I don't get it. Whatever. Nothing special, only chart books. I guess one thing that might be running in their favor is that they're on like multiple platforms. Where is it? And I'm having a hard time like finding anything. There you go. They're on multiple platforms. They're on Seer Charts, Ninja Trader, X Trader, and this one is this? Oh, Motive Wave. Yeah. Yeah. Then the marketing is a lot better. But I've never seen any marketing for it. Well, now they're on the Ninja Trader stream a lot, so that's probably pretty good marketing for them. But I kind of feel like, I mean, this is the larger problem. Like, the Ninja Trader stream has the same problem that we do, right? In order to get sufficiently large, or like in order for the stream to be like, to really, really pay off for you, to get the views, like people have to believe that watching the stream is objectively going to make them money. And that's not to say that there isn't value in watching Ninja Trader stream or watching my stream. There absolutely is. It's just that there's nothing that you can do that's just going to straight up make you money in the markets, financial markets, right? It's just so complicated. It's harder than that. You can have things that will help, and they each can provide a little bit of help, but they're not like that thing on its own is going to make you thousands of dollars. It just doesn't exist. You know? So what I'm kind of detecting is that you're getting that from traders that like, oh, I watched this stream, but then this guy, he lost money, so. Many profitable traders move to the other platforms other than Ninja? Well, that's another thing, but I already kind of alluded to that, right? I'm worried that more and more people will move off of NinjaTrader. I could be wrong about that. Like, I guess part of the reason why I believe that is because I personally am not able to get myself to buy all in on the NinjaTrader platform, right? Like, you have to use NinjaTrader as your broker. And I had problems when I was doing that. And basically because of that, I can't necessarily use the latest versions of everything. I am kind of wondering, though, if I should switch it. Because, one, the setup that I've got right now isn't going to work forever. And we're starting to get to the point where, like, the newest NinjaTrader version has enough new features that it's kind of hard for me to help people if I'm not on the latest version, you know? And then the other thing is that the machine learning stuff that I want to do is kind of being held back by the version of NinjaTrader that I'm on. If I was on the newer version of NinjaTrader, then I would be on a different version of C#.NET framework, and that would allow me to use different machine learning libraries, and I could just use a random forest function instead of having to write it myself. Right? Ninja audience is largely prop traders aren't profitable and won't spend. I think you might be right, Rox, but I don't know if that like answers anything. You know what I mean? Because the reality is that the vast majority now of retail futures traders are on prop firms, which actually kind of means that in terms of like what kind of platform would be best to attach yourselves to, NinjaTrader is probably still one of the best, right? And maybe it gets even more popular. Like maybe they introduce a store. Store could really help us. Could. You know, who knows? But then that's my other thing though, is the pattern day trader rule is probably going to change in a year. And when that happens, then I really, really think that it will be like the only retail traders trading futures are going to be prop firm guys trading equity index futures. And the number of people trying to do what we do, where you pick an instrument and you just really try and understand that instrument and what's going on in that instrument, probably not very many people. In which case, you would then want to be on a platform that also has stocks. Which, well, I guess you could do Thinkorswim, but like that's not very good for futures. Doesn't really have good order flow tools. Them and what's the other one? Interactive Brokers, and their platform is just effing weird. So then I come back to, well, probably the best thing that I could provide would be my own platform. If I had my own platform and it did full stocks and futures, you know? But then at the same time, like, okay, so even if we do say Ninja audience is largely prop traders, the profitable traders move to other platforms. Where do they move to? Sierra charts. So let's not get into all the issues with the Sierra charts platform. It's not a perfect platform, really. Still, I forget now what was the thought that prompted me down this path. Because now what I'm doing is like, I got done talking and now I'm kind of like, was there another point that I wanted to hit on that I forgot about? I'm not sure. I was just really, really shocked to see somebody I'd never heard of before appear to be doing really, really well selling a vastly inferior product. Yeah, but coding for Sierra charts. Yeah, so we had this thing where we wanted to build this indicator for Sierra charts, and we did, by the way. We did it. Everything worked out. It's all good. I can give it to you if you want it. It's not just that it's C++. Like, Sierra charts being C++ was probably the easiest part of trying to program in Sierra charts. Their API is extremely convoluted, nonsensical, poorly documented, and changed a lot. So like, especially if you want to use an LLM to help you, like you get stuck and you ask an LLM questions, pretty much everything that it says will be wrong. Right. And then I ran into a ton of things where it was like, okay, I can find the method in their documentation, but then like the documentation doesn't actually say enough to answer the question in many cases. And then just like, man, but the thing that made it the most difficult, I don't know how deep you want to get into this. I guess we're going deep. So what my algorithm does is it looks at what price orders have gone off at, and then tries to game out what the market maker positions can potentially be, like what the extremes of their positioning can be based on the orders that have been filled. Okay. Which essentially requires me to create a footprint for the whole session. Right. At the end of, like, I have a footprint for the whole session at the end of every bar. Squish that. Yeah. So in Sierra charts, in NinjaTrader. In NinjaTrader, I come in and I just say, okay, every time that there's an order, do this thing and then keep track of it, and I track it all myself. Right? Sierra charts doesn't let you do that stuff. Sierra charts basically says, well, we have our own kind of weird convoluted order flow indicators, and we're just going to give you handles to that stuff. So what I have to do is I have to like take the volume profile bars for the session and squish them together and then do my calculations. And so it's like, just like, what method is it that I need to use to get the data that I want? Like, figuring that out took forever. So yeah, especially when it comes to order flow stuff. Sierra charts API is just really convoluted, and it looks to me like what Sierra charts looks like to me is you had a really, really autistic C++ programmer that thinks that C++ is the greatest thing ever and does everything C++, right? He came in and wrote a base platform that was got the job done, and it was pretty good. And then ever after that, everything was just farmed out to some contractor, and they just spliced everything on top of it. And the only thing in the application, like in the design of it, that seems to be like a consistent design decision with intention is that they always prioritize like speed and efficiency, like use memory in the most efficient, like use the least amount of memory and do it in a way that's going to be the fastest, right? So like, as an example, if I want to look at every order that comes through and do stuff with it, right? Sign all of the orders so that I can build a cumulative delta. So that I can do a cumulative delta, right? In NinjaTrader, it's basically like it's an event-based architecture. So I can just attach to that on-market data event and then say every time that there's an order, do this categorization and stuff on it, right? In Sierra charts, what happens is they have a ring queue. So basically, especially with market depth events, you know, I can go into this one little queue that has the last 5,000 market events. But what if there was more than 5,000 market events in a bar? Well, then you're host. So for Sierra charts, they can attach onto it and they can say, oh, but actually, we do need to do this every time that this thing comes in. And then that's why they got this thing that's like, you know, they have their order flow indicators can do stuff that a custom one can't, essentially, because of that design, right? Whereas doing something like maybe moving to an event-based architecture like NinjaTrader has, just as an example, but there's a bunch of other different ways that they could handle that thing, right? Is it a little bit slower? I suppose, because you would have to have some sort of subscriber. You'd have to have some sort of thing that says, okay, here's this event, and here's you can subscribe to that event that will put you in this list, and then whenever this event happens, I have to go through that list and notify all of the subscribers, right? Does that add a little bit of overhead and time? Yeah, but it's not like crazy or anything, and it makes the developer's life insanely better, right? So I kind of think the decision was like the way that they designed their architecture was ultimately the wrong one. It's over-engineered for the task and ends up being bad at everything else. So that's how I feel about Sierra. But I want to make my platform in Rust, and maybe that ends up being like even worse. So maybe I shouldn't talk until I've done it and I've done it better, and then I can gloat. Huh. I think one of the things I was gonna say about this thing that kind of I thought was interesting about it was like they completely redid their NinjaTrader stream, because they had a set of guys, and I think that they weren't getting what they wanted out of it, so they redid it. And now Anthony Crudelli hosts the stream, is like their primary guy, which I think is absolutely the right pick. You know, I think that's actually absolutely the right choice. But apparently some people I'm seeing people complain. This is the first time I've seen people complain about the stream. I think this guy's going to make more threads, or just see where it goes. Should be fun if they should do me. We can go and find like my worst trading day. I'm pretty sure I have like we go back to 2019, we can go and find some days that were really, really bad. I don't think I've really had like a super bad day since 2020. I did have a bad month in 2022. No, the beginning of 2023. The beginning of 2023, I had a bad month. But like a really bad, like one day, just absolute disaster, hasn't. So I'm worried that I'm coming in, I'm trying to do like, I just want to stream and have my community and enjoy learning about the market. And like I don't have any expectations about getting rich or like have this huge ego built up about how good I am or I'm not. It's just I'm going through my process, and what happens, and we do the best that we can, right? And I'm worried because I've been attacked in the past. I always feel like I'm trying to be the most responsible person in this space, and I'm going to get criticized and piled on anyways. Well, anyways, by the way, what time is it? 7:30. Okay, so the S&P 500 has opened. Man, I tell you what, this has sure been a tight week. Like action being this tight. At this time of year and everything is a little bit weird. It's a little bit weird. So, you know what? There is something else we can talk about today. If we want to, I don't know. We're talking about trading stuff. That's good. But the other thing that's going on is this whole Tylenol thing, right? My goodness. Have you guys seen all of the social media conversation because of that press conference that Trump and RFK had, where they basically said that there's a link between Tylenol use during pregnancy and autism? And some people are awfully upset about it. This discussion honestly kind of pisses me off. It honestly kind of pisses me off because, like, I see all of these people like raging at Trump and how can this be and blah, 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 blah. Zero discussion about the empirical evidence. Like, here's a perfect opportunity for us to talk about the science and the statistics and empirical evidence behind a particular scientific claim, because it's actually a really, really interesting issue, in my opinion. Nobody's talking about it. What? Remember what I said yesterday? It doesn't matter, and it's obvious overreaching lies because Trump said it. Look, yeah. Well, like, the thing is, so there was a thread on, like, Change My View, I think it was. Yeah, it was Change My View that were saying, oh, Trump talking about autism, this is just like another part of the anti-intellectualism. No, I think you got it backwards. Like, they're saying something based on real research. I don't think that they themselves really understand the research. And instead of trying to understand the research and what we know and don't know, everybody on the internet is just raging against Trump. That to me is the same kind of anti-intellectualism that you see from the right. Because a Democrat said it, or they said something that goes against the conservative narrative, then you don't want to believe it. You see, the anti-intellectualism movement is not some cultural phenomenon specific to conservatives. It is what people tend to do when they've been out of power for a really long time. And if we have an era, which is kind of increasingly look like is going to happen, where conservatives are in charge of the government for like 20, 30 years. By the end of that 20, 30 years, you're going to see the anti-intellectualism movement on the side of Democrats, where they're not going to believe anything that anybody says. It's a reaction to being out of power. Because ultimately, most people do not look at empirical evidence to make their decisions. Let's see here. So I made a comment here and some people were responding to it. Let's see here. Are people using Tylenol when fever is not involved? Yes. The reason why them linking Tylenol use to autism is such a big deal is because women love Tylenol, man. There is all sorts of, well, there are feminine pains that you get. There are headaches that you get. and they know that Tylenol works on it, they'll use it. Yeah. Tylenol or ibuprofen, right? So, yeah, if I should be really clear, like something that is also true with all of this is if you're pregnant and you have a fever, that can really hurt the baby. So it's important to treat the fever, which means if you get a fever, you should probably take Tylenol, okay? A-ball, oh no, the absolutely harmless drug I can pump into my body at will is to try and stop headaches has consequences? Yeah, it does. This is kind of crazy. But like, here's the thing is we don't actually know. So here's the story that you're not being told about this. They went and they did these studies. These big studies where they took a bunch of information from people. You know, they ask them all these questions. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this while you were pregnant? And then they look at the pregnancy outcomes and things like that, right? So they go and they collect all of this data and they look at it and they find that, oh, actually, it looks like after we do all of our statistical magic that there is a link between Tylenol use and autism. That in pregnancies where Tylenol was used, the children were more likely to be autistic. Okay. And this is going back decades. Okay. This is going back decades. Several studies like this. Okay. Well, there's this issue. Like, how do you know that it's Tylenol is actually causing the autism? Maybe it's that women that have the genetics that are likely to, more likely to have autism are more likely to use Tylenol. They have complications and things. I tell you, when my autistic son was born, there was something wrong from the very beginning. His pregnancy was not like any of the others. Okay. So how do you prove cause and effect? So one of the things that they can do to try and prove this cause and effect and to control for other variables, like that in genetic conditions and stuff, is you can use like a sibling test. So you can come in and you can compare, okay, here we have a situation where one child, their siblings, so mother had multiple kids, one kid had autism, one kid didn't. Did they use Tylenol during that pregnancy or not? Right? And then that could control for some of those other factors. Right? So what happened was they did a number, I think there's like 4 studies like this, where they used sibling controls. And when they used sibling controls, this statistical link between Tylenol and autism wasn't there anymore. Okay. So some people will say, those studies were disproven, but that's not actually the full story. Because the issue is that the sibling control introduces its own set of statistical aberrations. So like, let me try and like make it more personal to you. Like, let's say that there's a link between watching Speculator Seth and autism. So is it that watching Speculator Seth gives you autism, or is it that autistic people are more likely to watch Speculator Seth? So we go and we do this controlled trial, right? We have sets of siblings, and one sibling, we ask them, have you watched Speculator Seth or not, right? So one has watched it and one hasn't. So let's say, we have one group, one set of siblings, both of them, neither of them have watched Speculator Seth. Okay, cool. And then we have another one where one watches Speculator Seth and one doesn't. And neither of them have autism. Okay, so there's like kind of our test case, right? This person, they watched Speculator Seth and they didn't get autism. Right? When we have another set, one watches and one doesn't. And the one that doesn't watch Speculator Seth gets autism, right? So then you would say, oh, see, that further proves that there's no effect, that watching Speculator Seth has no correlation between getting autism or not, right? But what if that person that got autism later after the study goes, oh, Speculator Seth, I have watched that guy before. I didn't know who he was or who you were talking about, but he has come up in my feed a few times. Actually, I've watched him a lot. And he was the one that got autism, right? Well, now you've got like what, 1 out of 6 people that got autism from watching my channel, right? Okay. So if there is an error in the thing they were measuring, in this case, Tylenol, because like, honestly, can you really remember if you took Tylenol or not during a pregnancy after, like years later? You might not know. And so that in itself is a statistical aberration that when you use the sibling control gets exaggerated, essentially. So you have 2 studies. They both have a problem in them that's likely to lead to a particular statistical problem. So those further studies don't disprove the link between Tylenol and autism as much as it just puts us back into unknown territory, which is where we're at. Which is why I would say, not that I'm a doctor, but I would say that just in case you should watch Speculator Seth. That's what I think you should do. Just in case. Okay, so if I were to assume a chemical reason for autism exists, I would equally assume the public would at this point fight tooth and nail against accepting it. Yeah. So there's another thing about autism that I think is like really relevant to this discussion that the public just doesn't seem to understand. And one of the really big problems I see is that the people that have autism really strongly, or like the people that are on social media with autism, like level 1 diagnosed autism people, right? Like it's become an identity for them, right? So the idea that identity came from a mistake, like taking Tylenol during pregnancy, for that very reason, it's very offensive to them, right? They're much more likely to believe that it's something deeper as a part of their identity. In other words, that it's a part of their DNA, right? Well, the thing is that autism is a developmental disorder. So both autism and ADHD are developmental disorders, but I think that autism is a little bit different from ADHD because with ADHD, it's mostly, we understand the mechanisms behind it and everything, and it basically has to do with the way that chemicals are secreted and taken back up in your brain and issues with that. And so the brain does not develop at the same pace as other people because of that, right? With autism, you have like more fundamental problems. So it's basically like your brain is a growing thing. And if that normal growth is disrupted in some way at a certain point, especially really, really early on, that can have cascade effects later on down the line where you're always going to see that in the development of the brain, no matter what. Right. And so that's why a developmental disorder can be caused by multiple different things. A developmental disorder can be caused by genetics. It could be caused by environment. It could be caused by diet. It could be caused by a combination of those factors. And it kind of turns into a combination of those factors were present at the right time, or maybe over a long period of time, that result in the change in brain development that creates the disorder. right? So it is probably is the case. And I say probably is the case just based on like what we understand about development and neurochemistry and things like that, that a lot of autism is due to genetic factors, but that there are some cases of autism that may also have environment as additional factors. And there could be some cases where like you have this genetic deficiency or genetic not deficiency, so something about your genetics causes your brain to just grow wrong and you're going to get it no matter what. But then there can be other people where they have something with their genetics, and when you combine that with a certain chemical in their environment, and then you get it, right? And those can all exist and be true, right? So, because I think some people are like, no, they're like, that's just the way that they are. So how can Tylenol cause that? Well, it can. If you're like having, and I think the reason why it's important to point this out is because having a fever at the right time could cause autism, right? So this is where it gets really kind of weird. It's like, okay, so taking Tylenol, we don't know, but there is a possibility that Tylenol use during pregnancy can potentially leads to an increased risk of having autism. But then at the same time, having a fever during pregnancy can lead to an increased risk of having of a child with autism. So please, if you have a fever and you're pregnant, take Tylenol to bring the fever down. But if you don't need the Tylenol, if you are stressed out and you have a headache, don't take Tylenol, okay? Not that I'm a doctor. Societies that identify with defects and disabilities will forever fight against correcting them. They'd rather be dead than not disabled. Well, I don't know. This gets into a weird spot, though, Izzy, right? Because based on what we know about autism, I would say, number one, there may be some cases of autism that could either be prevented or, if not prevented, at least dramatically reduced or like really, really help them develop better with, certain diet and things like that, right? So maybe there are some cases where you can prevent autism, but there are other cases where you cannot. So autism will always be there. There is never going to be a complete cure for autism unless we're able to identify all of the different possible genes that can contribute to it and all of the different possibilities, and you have supercomputers going through and analyzing everybody's gene code and seeing what the results of those are going to be and modifying their genes to avoid those issues before they ever come in, right? Then maybe you could completely cure autism, right? But there is maybe a subset of them that can be prevented or mitigated, let's say. You can mitigate a portion of them, possibly. Because we know for a fact that, like, if somebody's put in a very abusive environment, for instance, that they can develop ADHD from that, right? So it's developmental. Right? So you can't get rid of autism. And the whole thing is that it ends up being a pretty significant public health concern, especially when you start to realize that, like, okay, like there's autism like my son, where we'll see, but he may never be able to be independent. He has apraxia of speech at the very least, and yeah, it's I don't know if he'll ever be independent. Okay, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? Then there's all these other people that are like,
order canceled.
They can live on their own, but this still has a very negative impacts on their lives, right? Like they're going to people with autism, like the rate of unemployment compared to regular people is insane. Just insane. Even people that are like really well educated, went to school and everything, and they have hard time keeping employment. So like the impacts on those people are insane. And we as this, and so this is like when you start to look at those people, it's a much larger portion of the population than we think. You know, like those people, like if you include people that they don't meet the they don't fit the qualifications to even be diagnosed with autism level 1, but they still have some of the phenotype traits. Okay, you're probably talking about a quarter to a third of the population, right? So autism awareness is something that has more than many other potential health issues, has a very significant effect to make lives better. Just people being aware of autism and being able to accommodate. See, you're not going to want to accommodate, because the whole thing is your brain works really, really well, and their brain, they have to do everything the hard way. They have to like think through and do everything with logic. You can just do things on intuition, right? So you don't want to go and use that older system, right? It's inconvenient for you. But actually, it turns out that you can build an intuition for autism and be really, really effective. If all you have to do is just be aware of it and think about it a little bit, maybe have met somebody with autism and have a little bit of practice, and then you'll be great at it, and like people's lives will be better for like hardly any real cost to you. All you got to do is care, you know? So these people with autism that have kind of attached themselves to this community and everything, like they have a real point that society can change in a way that would really help them out and would have almost zero cost to society at large, other than that people just don't want to do it because they're lazy, right? But then at the same time, there's people that just like, they completely attach their whole personality to it, and they think that because they are disabled in some way, that should give them privileges, and that's
order filled.
Very toxic. Wow, order filled. How is that possible? Oh, it exited because there's news coming up. Very good. You know how many people said there was no way paint could be harmful? There is no way. I've had it for years. Lead makes it better, stronger, and oh yeah, for sure. And yet we found, and then we find when we took lead out of everything that like crime rates went down and stuff. That's bonkers. Yeah, and someday, I guarantee you, someday we're gonna fully understand the negative impacts of plastic in the environment, and it's just gonna be bonkers. Like people 1,000 years in the future will be horrified that we allowed plastic to just be everywhere. I love how people deal with headaches. Most people headaches are almost all of the time due to dehydration and not having enough water. So simple, right? More drugs in the body. Yeah, that's how I feel, but people that have headaches don't feel like that, so maybe. One of my stepdaughters gets like real migraines, and that's like a serious thing. I don't think that's just water. Okay, so the markets did move here off of the release just a little bit. New home sales change month over month 20.5% versus the expectation of negative spot 3. That's going to hurt the treasuries, I think. Because one of the best arguments in favor of lower interest rates right now is that the housing market is just a complete disaster. Well, I'm going to bet, well, I shouldn't say that I should bet, but perhaps the anticipation of the interest rate coming down a little bit, and interest rates have gone up. Maybe that's why new home sales got so much better. And since it was so low to begin with, 20% is not as hard to achieve as it might seem. So I think that just kind of puts it in perspective. I think that it hurts treasuries, but it's not like huge. So the impact that we just saw there, I think, is appropriate. There was an interesting iceberg at 23 there. I want to remind you that there is a 5-year note auction today, so that might have something to do with that. We'll watch where the 5-year is going because they've moved quite a bit. That is probably going to dominate where we go from here and could make where we end up on the session very interesting. Like if the auction goes poorly, then it could really hurt the treasuries. And I am concerned, going back, I do need to get going, but I'm just yapping here. If I come to a daily chart, I am concerned about us falling into like this, range going all the way back to 112.01 half. Like basically all the way back to the ATR stop. So anyways, hope you guys learned something about autism today. Well, I had it was good discussions today. 90 minutes isn't nearly enough time to trade, but it's pretty good for chatting. So there's that. We'll see where we go. I'm still unsure where I want to take things, but I'm still very optimistic about the future, and I think that we have like a really good position. Once we know what to do, we can just do it, and it's going to be amazing. So just kind of us together deciding what it is that we actually want. It's not just me. That's the other problem, is that it's all like I'm thinking in my head, but I need to get more insight into what you guys would like. So think about it, right? I will see you guys tomorrow. More bigger news tomorrow, like GDP. So see you then. In the meantime, stay